Kiss Me Deadly landed in theaters near the end of the so-called golden age of film noir, the genre that didn't really have a name until after it had already passed out of fashion and had been assigned one by a bunch of classy French academic movie snobs who retroactively declared that the least classy, most academically disreputable general audience American movies of their era had been where the artistic action was all along. Fancy that. But even in a genre that never got its due in the first place, Kiss Me Deadly managed to be overlooked. It was too dark for most audiences, too nihilistic for most critics, and even many devoted fans of the hard-boiled detective genre turned up their noses at how radically it had overhauled one of author Mickey Spillane's celebrated Mike Hammer novels, of which it's technically an adaptation, but functionally, well, it's more like an apocalyptic deconstruction. Whereas Spillane's Mike Hammer was beloved by audiences for fusing the vicariously sleazy thrills of other contemporary crime and detective fiction with a sheen of moral righteousness and cathartic infliction of violence on criminal evildoers borrowed from Spillane's earlier life writing for comic books, the version of Mike Hammer conjured for Kiss Me Deadly by director Robert Aldrich, screenwriter A.I. Bezzarides, and actor Ralph Meeker isn't even a little bit of a hero. Essentially the archetypal hard-boiled detective hero with all the Hollywood gloss stripped away.
Suit yourself.
He's a bitter, cruel, not terribly intelligent thug and bully whose sole quasi-heroic qualities are contempt for authority and that he takes a beating pretty well, which of course is pretty much how guys who share the literary Mike Hammer's sadism as heroism just because I hate the bad guys so much vigilante self-image in real life tend to be, and maybe that was the point. In any case, the version of Hammer as played by Ralph Meeker is the first thing that elevates Kiss Me Deadly above a typical hard-boiled thriller. As for the second thing, well, that requires digging into the plot, which begins with Hammer picking up a nearly naked fleeing woman on the road at night only to find both of them kidnapped by the unknown men who were chasing her. She gets tortured to death and they try to kill Hammer too as part of staging an accidental death, but he survives because he's a tough bastard and decides to investigate what the hell happened, mostly because he's pissed off to have been messed with. Damn whatever was going on with the girl. Incidentally, this version of Hammer, rather than being an avenging, crime-busting vigilante PI, actually pulls most of his living out of digging up dirt on wayward husbands for cheap-jack divorce cases, with his secretary-slash-lover Velda frequently employed to seduce said husbands to make sure there's actual evidence of infidelity. These are our heroes, folks.
That tape I made of you and Loverboy got lost.
There goes your case.
Call him up and set up another session. Tell him you're sorry. You want to make up for all the pain you gave him. Give him some of that sincerity.
So anyway, Hammer goes about investigating the mystery woman's murder. He gets into fights, smugs it up with the real police, beats up and harasses the other corrupt jerks who have information he needs, beats up and harasses perfectly innocent people who don't give him the information fast enough.
Hey, Caruso's Pagliacci.
Caruso Pagliacci, il maestro.
That's a collector's item.
A collector's item, yeah.
Acts like a controlling creeper to a woman named Lily Carver, who claims to be the dead girl's friend and roommate, and generally takes us on a walking tour of the sleaziest, ugliest, meanest, most nihilistic vision of the Los Angeles criminal underbelly, guided by the most odious rat bastard protagonist ever to do so. Like I said, this is hot-boiled, knuckle-sandwich detective fiction with the crusts left on. Everything is corrupt, everybody sucks, and the players are only in it for number one. And if you've not seen the movie and you feel like you may actually want to see it at this point, I sincerely advise you to turn this off, watch it, then come back, because it is one of those movies where talking about what makes it interesting means we've got to do the big spoiler. So keep watching or go watch the movie, but spoiler incoming. You've been warned. Okay, so without explaining all the red herrings and false leads, the dead girl, who incidentally was fleeing wrongful committal to a mental institution, and Lily are endangered because they're wrapped up with some nefarious individuals of unknown origin who, this being a mystery thriller from the 1950s, are all chasing after a literal mystery box, the contents of which aren't entirely clear, but apparently are worth killing over, and of course, worth the actual police and the feds ominously warning Mike Hammer not to get involved with because it's way outside his purview.
I almost got myself killed, and all he wants is a little more filling.
Is it too much to ask for your cooperation?
And make him try it again?
You'll be given full protection.
Why don't you tell us what you know? And step aside like a nice fella and let us do our job.
What's in it for me?
But of course, Mike does eventually bluster his way into finding it, and he can't resist looking to see what's inside. Holy shit, right? Okay, firstly, yes, every other place where you've seen that, this is where it's from. Secondly, no, we never actually find out what is in the box, though all the bad guys seem to be foreign spies, and it is the height of the Cold War, so you can get a pretty good picture of what we're to assume it might entail. But the important thing is, not only are we subverting the last prize trope of the hard-boiled PI hero, i.e., hey, the cops and the G-men were right, the sleazebag small potatoes private detective actually is way, way over his head here and shouldn't have bothered.
How'd you get that? Now listen, Mike. Listen carefully. I'm going to pronounce a few words. They're harmless words. Just a bunch of letters scrambled together. But their meaning is very important. Try to understand what they mean. Manhattan Project, Los Alamos, Trinity.
In that quick flash of light and unearthly sound effect, Kiss Me Deadly transforms without any warning to the audience into basically a low-key science fiction film. Very few films ever made have opted to make that kind of jump and hide the reveal so completely, and even the best known of those tend to hold the twist for the very end. But here's a movie from 1955 where what plays out up to that point as a completely straight, normal, basically realistic crime movie suddenly reveals that all the chasing and shooting has been over a box full of horrifying, otherworldly, and/or supernatural destructive power. It's like if midway through The Departed you found out Frank Costello had the One Ring. In any case, it turns out Lily Carver is actually not Lily Carver and is in fact in league with sinister forces who've been hunting the Box of Evil, which ultimately leads to Hammer and Velda both being held prisoner in an isolated beach house by not actually Lily and her co-conspirator whom she double-crosses. Hammer, once more profoundly out of his depth,
kiss me. The liar's kiss that says I love you. It means something else. You're good at giving such kisses. Kiss me.
pretty much goes out like a punk, but our villainess can't help but look in the box and, well, this happens. And yeah, that's our ending. Hammer barely manages to rescue Velda, and she in turn barely manages to drag our hero's gut-shot ass outside to safety, as whatever sinister force was inside the box turns the unfortunately curious femme fatale into a literal pillar of fire, and consumes the beach house in a firestorm of otherworldly energy and ultra-unnerving sound effects that can't help but sound like a chorus of demonic screams. It's also one step from surreal. It's hard not to read the whole thing, and many have, as an outright apocalyptic finale, with about 100 minutes of nihilistic, everyone's a bastard, city on the brink hopelessness, capping off with something like Old Testament biblical fury being unleashed and the additional coda of our ostensible heroes literally crawling back into the sea. And, since for a long time the only version of this you could see was a poorly spliced, shortened edit that for yet unknown reasons cut right to the explosions and just ended, implying that no one had made it out alive, many thought it was even more apocalyptic than that. So how'd this happen? Well, some of it was that Aldrich and Bezzarides absolutely hated everything that both Spillane and the Mike Hammer books stood for in the popular culture of the time, particularly their virulent misogyny, proud anti-intellectualism, and reflexive anti-communism, and actively fought to frame the film as a deconstruction of American right-wing bravado, and thus a subtle attack on the legacy of McCarthyism, hence the skewed morality, complete lack of a sympathetic human being to root for in the main cast, and moving an otherwise authentic, brutal, stupid, and cruel Mike Hammer himself from bustling New York City to debauched Los Angeles, and no, Spillane was not happy about any of this. this, but it also, bizarrely, may also owe its most memorable element to having to circumvent censorship. In the original book, the villains are just mobsters and the MacGuffin is just a block of heroin. The edgy set piece is that the book's version of Not Lily Carver is a femme fatale who looks like a beautiful bombshell but is actually hiding a body horribly disfigured by burns that she alleviates with full-body alcohol massages. When she confronts Hammer with the liar's kiss monologue in that version, he realizes that she's still slathered in a fresh coat of said alcohol and uses his lighter to set her on fire. The end. Yeah. Obviously, in 1955, you couldn't show any of that in a movie and pass the censors, and you couldn't even mention heroin. In finding a way around all of that while somehow keeping the iconic lady going up like a Roman candle finale, they came up with all of this. The film was not a major success in theaters at the time and was so generally thought of as a weird also-ran in the crime genre that almost nobody, including MGM, ever realized that the aforementioned crudely edited ending, where everyone seems to die, was the version being held in studio vaults and distributed to TV, revival screenings, and the like. In fact, the mistakenly attributed reading of the awkward edits as some kind of intentional surrealist flourish, i.e. the apocalyptic forces of the box are even ripping the film itself apart, was often touted as one of the observations that set the Cahiers du Cinéma crowd's critical re-examination of the genre, auteur theory, and the coining of the term film noir itself into motion. Film scholars from Francois Truffaut to Martin Scorsese all opined on such implications in that context for decades until the long-rumored original ending missing scenes were recovered and restored in the late 1990s. But even though it turned out Aldrich wasn't breaking the fourth wall in the finale, the film remains an influential classic for a reason. Even divorced from the sci-fi twist, it's simply a really good hard-boiled crime thriller.
He told you the police have already been through her apartment.
I want to go through her apartment.
Ask him who he is, Horace.
Tell her to shut up.
Shut up.
And it must be said, Mike Hammer as a one-dimensional sadistic asshole in a film that's aware of this and holds it up to the cold light of day is a lot more interesting than Mike Hammer as a one-dimensional sadistic asshole in versions that see him in strictly heroic terms, placing the film neatly beside Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers in the pantheon of slick genre films cleverly elevated by deconstructionist takes and the filmmaker's utter contempt for the material and worldview of the creator. As I hope many of you have already discovered by listening to me and pausing the episode to go watch the movie, Kiss Me Deadly is a real gem. Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is moviebob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest MovieBob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, MovieBob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future MovieBob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another MovieBob production.